I'm Sara Kooperman, and I'm the CEO of SCW Fitness Education and WATERinMOTION. I'm really excited today. I have amazing presenters. We're going to be talking about communicating with your team and your members. And we're really going to try to focus on different technologies that are available, and also just different systems you can use, and just simple protocols you can follow. We've got Chris Stevenson here. He's an international speaker who regularly presents at fitness and business events across the world. He's also presenting at Livestream Mania. We've also got Blair McHaney. He's the CEO of MXM. It's Medallia's partner to the fitness industry. He's an educator, practitioner, student, and subject matter expert on operational member experience management. Yeah, that's a mouthful. And then we've got the lovely Emma Berry, who's a global fitness authority who advises the innovative edge of fitness, which is the boutique studio market, along with budget clubs, digital workouts, fit tech startups, and also independent health clubs. And we've got Bill McBride. He's a health club industry veteran with over 25 years of experience leading and managing all aspects of commercial health clubs, medical fitness centers, residential communities, multi-tenant. He's the king of active wellness. So I'm really thrilled to have these amazing presenters here. Thank you guys for all giving us your valuable time. And I do want to start with Chris, because Chris was on our wonderful panel that we did on reopening, and very informative. And I asked him, I said, what do you think would be a great topic? So this whole thing is Chris's fault. So why did you think that communication was so important?
Well, I think communicating with the staff is essential. And right now we're so member focused, as we should be, communicating to our members, letting them know what we're doing, what we're going to do once we're open. Sometimes the staff gets a little bit lost. And this was evident in a local club in our area, where the staff, when they had to shut down, or when the facility had to shut down, they told their members and staff in the exact same mass email. And the members actually got really mad at the way that club treated their staff. They thought the staff should have known ahead of time, and they absolutely should. So that was one of those things I thought about. I'm like, hopefully people are focusing on how to consistently communicate with their staff to make sure you keep them in the loop, keep them engaged while you're closed, because it's going to be hard to run your club if you don't have staff to come back to do that once you reopen. So I just think some people are missing out a little bit, and we need to make sure that we don't miss out on that, because it's very important.
Now, what happened to the club? I mean, you said something like the members knew things at the same exact time that the staff was being informed.
Yeah, so when they had to shut down for the closure, everybody was kind of like, wait, so we don't have jobs and the members don't have a place to go. And you don't realize that, yes, your staff would be irritated not knowing ahead of time, but the members actually just were enraged that they looked at this as a club that just does not treat their staff right. And people generally don't like to support businesses that aren't great to their staff. So that was a big oops by those guys.
So tell me some of the strategies that you would employ to make sure that your staff knows how you're going to open, when you're going to open, how you're going to manage traffic in the facility, what programs you're going to launch first, how you're going to manage the equipment usage. What do they do?
Oh, is it still me?
Yeah, it's still you, big guy with the mustache.
Thank you. It's a COVID mustache. So I think people are excited for this stay at home to lift just so I'll shave. And I'm pretty cool with that. I think, first of all, in a time where things are unpredictable and things are so uncertain, I think making sure that you put out a cadence of expected communication and then follow that with your staff. So let them know every Monday you're going to hear from this particular leader in our organization, and here's what they're going to talk about. Here's how often you should expect a phone call. Here's how often we're going to do these Zoom meetings. So give them that predictability in an unpredictable world, and you're going to make them feel safer. And I think that's a great way to engage. And then I think just overall, diversify the way you communicate. Certain things should be a phone call. Certain things should be emails. And people perceive information and learn it differently. So, setting a video, some people might really take that information better. Some people would rather read it. So, you know, diversify the way you communicate, make it a predictable cadence that you're communicating with. I think those would be really important.
One of the things we found to be so valuable was communicate back to the way the people communicated to you. So if somebody emailed us, we emailed them back. If somebody made a phone call, we made the phone call back. If they texted us. So that's their method of communication, and they're the boss. The customer's the boss, but also my staff is the boss. And we try, I think that it's so important for staff to have scheduled meetings. Every team out there should have a scheduled staff meeting. And if some of these people on the call today are instructors or personal trainers and they don't know when the club is going to open up, they don't know when the protocols are to begin, you know what? It's your responsibility to reach back out to the club as well. Bill, Blair, please go ahead.
Well, one thing I was going to say to Chris's point on that too, when you do need to communicate with staff first, and then you also want to think through the details of that. So, like when we were going into that shutdown, we made sure that managers had their group texts all queued up, ready to go. So as we were doing our core plan, I mean, think through the actual execution of it. So you know that what are the chances that somebody's going to open their email? What are the chances that they're going to get a text? Who are we going to call on the phone? And depending on how large the organization is, you know, how much do you have to have a cascading message? And then the next question is like, how much time do you need to have between the communication to the staff and when you're going to post something out and then communicate to all your members? And I think it's critical. You've got to think through those details of execution.
And I really like the way you described cascading message. I mean, look at the way we inform people about just the webinar today. You know, they got an email this morning and they got a text message. We can't discount that 90% of people open their text messages, whereas we're lucky if 60% of them are opening their emails. We actually also saw a flip between, it used to be 60% people opening all their email messages and 40% on the computer. And now because of the pandemic, it actually flipped, which is kind of fascinating. And Emma, I'm seeing you nod your head. Please now nod your head and open your mouth. Please share with us.
You keep going, Blair. He's on a roll.
No, Emma, jump in there.
So I mean, I'm just speaking more from a global perspective, I guess, Sarah. So everyone's at a different stage of the wave. We've got some people in Belgium and Spain opening up next week. We've got people sort of pushed out to September and October through the Netherlands and the UK. What's interesting for me is there's a real feeling of, yes, everything that the boys are saying as well is around, you know, treat the staff with respect, be authentic, have transparency, be really honest. And I don't know about you guys, but we've been through the rainbow of emotions, and it's really important that we shift through with our staff and our members at the same time. I saw some stuff come up in the chat box around staff that's been furloughed, etc. Some of these people, it's hard to talk to them because we're not allowed to talk to them because that would be working. So that's been an interesting thing, particularly in some countries in Europe that we've had to deal with. So there's been like a weekly message that's been sent out, and that's about all you can get away with sort of legally. So that's sort of been interesting. But my points would be more around, as we step back into the new normal, whatever that is, and it will never quite be the same, let's hold on to some of the lessons of lockdown that we've had while we've been here. We've been physically distanced, but we've been socially closer in many ways, would be my experience anyway. So I just think there's some lessons of now. And yeah, I mean, just those comments to open probably, Sarah.
That's great. That's great. And Bill, you were chatting a little bit about authenticity, and that really resonated with me. I really enjoyed that. Can you please share more?
Yeah, I mean, our industry is based on authentic relationships, right? And so good leadership is having confidence to have a plan, work with your teams on a plan, and have optimism that it's all going to be okay. But it's also vulnerability and sharing that you don't have all the answers, and you know, being natural but being prepared. And there's a difference. Like, you're not just making it up or ad-libbing. You're coming from a place of, here's my thought process, here's my plan, here's what the team worked on together, here's what we're thinking. But also showing vulnerability that you don't have the answers. One of the participants asked a great question. How do you communicate with staff about furloughs when you don't know when they're going to come back? You know, that's the $1 million question. How do you communicate to anyone when you don't know when you're going to come back? You know, so, you know, having confidence, a plan, but showing authenticness and vulnerability in that we don't have all the answers. If the loan's not forgiven, if business doesn't if they don't let us open up, you know, you can only make so many assumptions with limited variables and data. So, you know, plan for the controllables, be optimistic, keep moving forward, but also be real.
Can I jump in there too on that, Sarah, for a second? Because one thing
you absolutely can. I give you my permission to jump in.
I yield the floor to the fine gentleman. Let me stop there. Oftentimes, a leader will get in a position, just like what Bill's describing, and they get concerned about their communication. And they'll start to think something like, well, here's what my biggest concern is about this communication. And they start thinking about that. And I oftentimes coach people to say, start your communication with that self-talk. Start your communication with saying, team, I got to tell you, here's my biggest concern about this communication. And just get it right down to the, you know, when Bill's talking about authenticity and showing vulnerability, when you hear yourself start to say that, sometimes that's the very best way to start that communicate.
Yeah, Brett Darden has a good thing called the brief back. Anybody that's known Brent in some of the sessions, he talks about a brief back, where after you talk to somebody, you have them repeat it back to you in a way to make sure they got it. It's not a bad idea to have somebody on your team brief back on some of these things. What's your understanding of where we are today? And let somebody else talk. You know, so, you know, I echo and support what Blair said.
As we've got a wonderful question in the chat box, where how do you communicate with one of your staff members that you can tell doesn't feel quite comfortable with coming back? Meaning, I had some people, I had some part-time people that just pulled back on their hours, and then we invited them back. And some of them jumped with open arms to come back with us. And some people just went, I'm not there. And there's a lot of trust issues, because I found that it was a lack of being that authentic and being honest. So we go through our revenue with our entire staff every single week. They see what's going on. That helped me communicate better with my team, being very open where we're at financially, what monies we need to come in to make sure that we're paying rent, to make sure we're paying salaries. And I never had operated that way, but opening the kimono, so to speak, really helped them understand where we were coming from. You know, what it's like not to have any membership dues for 7 weeks. You know, that's a frightening thought. And that I'm not taking a salary, but, you know, I'm going to decrease your salary by 20%, but we're going to have you back. Emma, one of the things I did want to comment on is, you're right, it's a very slippery slope in America. How do you communicate with people on furlough? If you're not asking them to do something for you, if you're just reaching out and saying, I want to inform you where we're at and when we're going to start, that is not perceived as an employee-employer relationship, or as an independent contractor-employer relationship. And that is, I would wholeheartedly encourage that. What different modalities, I know, Emma, you're this global expert, but also what different modalities would you encourage people to use, and what type of timeline would you offer as a suggestion, not just to the owners, but to the instructors and trainers out there?
In terms of ways of communicating?
Yes.
I mean, look, most companies have got their preferred. I mean, most people we know just from all the memes is Zoom and, you know, the occasional pop-ups which weren't welcome. So that was sort of a bit of funny stuff that happened at the beginning. A lot of people are on GoToMeetings, some are on Blue Jeans, people are on a lot of different platforms. So you usually have to go on what your company is. Most of my groups in Europe, to be honest, are on WhatsApp because it's just such a nimble way to have group chats around stuff. So they tend to use that a lot more than a lot of my colleagues in the US for some reason, although there's some getting onto that now. And then, and of course, we've got the whole digital platform of the way that people are communicating their classes and stuff like that. And I think it's been a wonderful moment for digital in that it's accelerated a lot of communication in this way. It's my belief that beyond this, apart from the fact that we won't have the money that we did before, people will actually do a lot more business from afar, or more of it than they used to have. I think we used to just fly across the country without thinking about it. I think a lot more of this will continue beyond these times, and if we do have to go through another wave or whatever, we're going to be set up to do that. Businesses have been forced to have a digital expression of the brand, but also a digital way to communicate with their senior team, with their managers, right down with their trainers, with their group X. I mean, it's been a very solidifying moment for digital. So I would say it's going to go on forever. It's going to be a part of our ecosystem now, and then it's getting beyond the holy crap, we just had to do something for now. Finding it has to meet your brand standards, and I know people are making decisions now around, you know, which formats they use based on what suits their brand and how many people they're dealing with, and then what that will look like under their brand standard going forward. Yeah.
You had, and we were talking about this right before the webinar began, you had a list of, I think it was like 6 or 7 different apps and different applications, different technologies that people could use to have a digital platform. And that's kind of an interesting, I find that a very interesting concept, because there's a lot of instructors out there that have been charging. Okay, maybe they haven't set up, you know, Square or PayPal accounts, but they've set up Venmo, which is a wonderful way to receive payment because you can actually message somebody back on Venmo, which is fantastic. And yet, do they continue to do these Venmo programs? Or are they now doing it for the club? And how do you communicate those strategies and open it up to, you know, having the staff? Does the staff generally get together and talk about it themselves with the owners? Does the owner set a strategy and say, this is the only way to do it? You guys have experienced some clubs opening up. What are you seeing?
I mean, I'll head out. I mean, first of all, I'd say that all of that's going to exist going forward, Sarah. So I think the clubs have to have a strategy and they have to be thinking about this. And the world when we go back is going to be different too. And I was just speaking to Europe this morning. I mean, they are literally halving their live X class because they've lost so much revenue. They cannot afford the payroll, as an example. So they're now running at half mast. Half the people are satisfied during those peak hours. They've increased their virtual presence. Their members have wanted their instructors in front, so they don't want all the big guys coming in with Weeks or all the big brands that we know. They want their people filmed and put up there. So these are some of the things that are happening in my world. And then you've got the options to, do you stream it? And of course, there's all sorts of music licensing around that. Do you on demand it? And there's music licensing around all of that as well. Do you just go to virtual and things like that? So from my GX world, I would say that those are all the options. So the things are, the clubs have to have a strategy. And also I have a number of instructors who also have a strategy because I have no income coming in, so I need to do something now. And I have a number of friends who are actually making more money now than they were previously. So you've kind of got all of that, and all of that will settle once we go back, but you're going to have different economies. Wherever there's money that can be made or people desperately trying to feed themselves or what have you, you're going to get all of those, that proliferation of business models, I believe. But clubs have to have a perspective on this for sure.
And I think they have to have a strategy on that.
Absolutely.
Most definitely. Because we look at what happened with 9/11. Yeah. And everybody said, oh, it'll be great. We're going to go back and we don't have to go through TSA and there's not going to be any screening. And it's like, you're crazy. The screening has gotten, unfortunately, worse. So we have to make these decisions to go virtual. And Bill, you were talking about, and you had this wonderful package about reopening. We've got to be able to navigate people through our clubs and communicate with them, not just via email or Zoom or these special technological apps that we need to train them on, train our staff and train our members. Signage. I was like, you know, you're going to have to pay a design team. You're going to have to print it out. You're going to have to get it laminated. How do we navigate through that mess?
Yeah, let me say one thing, and then we'll jump into signage, Sarah. To Emma's point, there's mega trends that are happening in that, and there's some trends that were on their way and have been rapidly accelerated. Self-reliance is a trend that you're going to see more of. We have to go and hunt and gather our own toilet paper and paper towels and hoard it. We have to make our own money. We're going to save at a different rate. You know, I think these economists and politicians that think that everything's going to bounce right back, I didn't have enough money saved in my accounts to have the unpredictability of what's going on. So there's a sense of self-reliance that I've got to depend on me as a consumer and as an employee. So that conversation that Emma's talking about, how does that employee have their own abilities, but also the club's a part of it? That's going to be a changing dynamic. And I just wanted to mention that because that's human self-reliance is going to be something that is going to expand. We think that good design is invisible. I don't know what's going on in everybody's grocery stores, but in ours here in Arizona, there's arrows. You can only go one way down the aisles. No one follows the arrows down the one way. No one does because it's not good design. We've been conditioned our whole lives to walk, you know, wherever you start, you go back and forth. So that's a bad idea in design. So good design is invisible. So when you walk your club, you want to see, if I wanted to stay 6 feet away from people and have as little interaction, how would I traverse the club? You want to walk that as a consumer in how you're laying out your new design and how you're accommodating things. Carrie Bedgood's our chief marketing officer, excuse me. She was promoted a while back. And she runs a whole design and marketing team. She created a signage package that we're making available to other people in the industry for a nominal fee, that we ship you all the signs, all the vinyls, all that. Sarah, you could show some of those signs if you want, but it makes it easy to implement a program where you've got decals on the floor, vinyls that peel off the floor but are there to mark spots in classes, where the sanitation stations are. Blair had a really good point in previous webinars about making them visible in a different color than your other things. But using, you know, mindful signage in your design to help people traverse the new environment. And so that's a member education, a staff education, you know, a whole process. But you don't want to open up looking like you haven't done anything for the last 2, 3, 4 months. You know, you want to open up that I've really thought this through on all my touch points. I've thought through how I'm going to deliver. And so I won't take up a lot more time there. I see Blair chomping at the bit, and Chris has always got something good to add.
Go ahead, Chris.
So just real quickly, and to Bill's point in showing that signage, the other thing you want to make sure you do, because you'll notice that was beautiful looking signage. What you don't want to do in an environment that's got to be meticulously clean and have the perception of being clean is throw duct tape on the floor in the shape of an X. And I think part of the grocery store,
worse, police crime scene tape.
Right. Yeah,
that's perfect.
But yeah, it's got to look clean and professional, like you've put some thought and care into it. The grocery store analogy was great. I don't follow it because I'm not used to it and it's poor design, but it's also these terrible signs that somebody quickly typed in Word and printed. You got to have that clean, professional look that you just saw for that stuff to really make the impression that you want it to make.
And so on that too, so we took, and thank you very much, Bill, we took Bill's whole sign package and we walked through the club, and then you'll have conversations like this as you're walking the club. Well, do we really need that there? I'm not sure we really need that there. And then remember this, we're talking about communication here. Everything is communication. And the answer is probably, it might signal something very positive to put it there. Whether your logic brain is thinking, do I really need to have another one of those here? But it might be a very strong signal right out of the gate that, to Bill's point, that you've really thought this through. Out professional your competitors. Out professional.
I like that. I really like that. But it's interesting. We're scared. We're scared because it is totally uncharted territory. Like, honestly, when this pandemic hit, it's like, you know, March 15th, and I'm looking around, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't have a conference. What do I do? Well, we're going to start doing webinars. And it's like, we're still learning from the webinars. And Blair, you're the hugest advocate, which I love, for learnings, where whenever we've done a conference, whenever we do webinars, whenever we provide a certification, and we were lucky enough that we started live streaming certifications 9 months ago, and at the beginning, October 1st, 2019. So we've got some expertise, but every single time we do it, it's like a learning and a learning. And I think you cautioned everyone very wisely that when they open, you're going to pre-plan, and you're going to pre-plan. It's like, I'm going to raise my child, and he's never going to drink Coca-Cola, and he'll never have Cheerios and whole milk for dinner. To me, that's a total food group. Throw in a piece of chocolate, maybe a little red wine. I'm done. We don't expect these things. We plan, and then you guys, we got to pivot, man. We got to pivot. And
well, to Blair's point about continuous learning, I'd also offer, it's got to be micro learning now.
Yeah.
You doing a 45-minute webinar is brilliant. It's a digestible amount, but a training video can't be more than a minute and a half, 3 minutes. So we're going into studios in one of our facilities and filming all of our training videos for our members and our staff next week, but they've got to be micro learning elements to all the components. You're not going to have the opportunity to have every staff and every member go through 12 hours of video training and manuals and books, and there needs to be resource guides and micro learning. So I just want to encourage everybody to keep your points of learning and training very simplistic and direct, and do micro learning.
And I totally agree with you, Bill, because it's got to be short. And I'm going to tell everybody online here, if you want to post it on Instagram and then put the little link in so that it automatically goes to your Facebook, it's got to be under a minute. So make it 59 seconds, because it won't post otherwise. So
I will say this though, it is interesting right now how, I thought Equinox sent out a really good notice to members, and it was long, but people right now that are there, like with members sitting there wanting to hear about your update, it's pretty interesting. I started one on, I posted my last update to members, said, bear with me, this is a little bit long. And I couldn't believe how many comments, and I'm finding myself sort of doing that too, right? Like I'm willing to read a little bit more content if it's something that feels like is an unknown to me. I think people might be willing to read a little bit more content in that context. I do think that's different than what Bill's talking about, where you break your learning down into more bite-sized pieces. And by the way, if you do a training video and it's 7 minutes, figure out the smaller subjects and just go in more detail on smaller subjects.
Yes, and Chris, you're nodding there.
Yeah. No, I think that's right on. And I think also remembering that people learn differently. And we noticed this with a couple studios and posting online content. Some would actually post a video, and there are some people that like to watch a video and really learn and enjoy it that way, versus other people who are like, I just need a list of the 7 bullet points or the 7 workout exercises. I think it's the same thing with the training, small doses of video and also the written protocol. So if you're better at reading something and really taking that in and learning it versus I'm better watching and hearing it, give them the, diversify the way you're putting that information out, I think would be really helpful.
We found something to be quite helpful is we always do our staff meetings. Staff meetings are key, just an open forum talking to people. But again, if somebody's on furlough, it's a little bit hard to do that. But having that staff meeting, we actually found that we do ours through Skype. You can do it through Zoom, you can do it through GoToMeeting, you can do it through Skype. We were doing it through Skype. And at the end of the meetings, everybody had to turn their camera on. And normally people are really, really hesitant to do that. And it was like people are clicking and everybody just wanted to see each other. It's just, it's like this starvation for contact, for contact with people. And so because we have, what do we have now? We have 222 people on this webinar. We can't show everybody's photo. We can't listen to everybody's comment. I beg you to, write things in the chat box, but I would love to somehow make it bite-sized. So my Zoom meeting, I can see 20 people on one screen. People want to look at each other. They want to touch and feel each other. And we've forever changed our style of communication. How do you see that impacting for the future? Like for staff meetings and communicating with members. It's not just, I think they do want to see each other, and we've got to open this up. So
one quick point, Sarah, on Leslie KD put up the acronym VARC on the chat box: visual, auditory, reading, and kinesthetic. And kinesthetic for our group of team members and associates and leaders is critical. So cleaning equipment, traversing member communications. Don't leave out role play.
Right.
Don't leave out physicality. Here's how to clean a piece of equipment. If you just do two sides and don't do all four sides, we got a problem. All right. So that kinesthetic aspect of learning with role play, with we're going up to equipment on cleaning protocols. So I just want to call out and thank Leslie KD for putting up that VARC acronym. That's dead on, and not and reminding us to really think about kinesthetic.
That's great. And Emma, you've kind of been scribbling and nodding, and I know you're thinking. I can see it.
Yeah, look, I'm just hoping that, again, that we hang on to the good stuff that we've learnt through this. And I think there has been an incredible amount of empathy and people really slowing down and taking another perspective. I think, just to pick up on that point you made earlier around coming back to the clubs, staff and members, some are going to be hesitant. Anyone who's harbouring a physical issue or is nervous or a certain age bracket or what have you, or perhaps isn't as healthy as they would like, they are going to be dealing with fear. Other people we know don't even realise there's anything wrong with the world, and they're ready to barge back in and go and hug and kiss people. So I think it's going to be very interesting as we settle and come back in. But I just think the comments that Bill made around having an empathy with people, meeting them where they are, but also remembering that everyone's human, as are we, and just to be really vulnerable and to be really honest in each of those moments, making the best decisions we can for all the people that we're responsible for. And I think when you put that up front, people are very sympathetic and they're very, they go with you. There's been a lot of people taking on a lot of things that they wouldn't normally have stood up for. You think of America, you get some bad service, you're out, Here, there's just been everyone's really understanding and sympathetic. But to everyone's point here today, we have to go beyond the extra mile to make sure that we're making people feel safe and that the staff are well role played in the ways that we like, and that we're ready for those tricky questions. What do we do when staff members perhaps aren't following the rules of the house? And we have decided that there has to be distancing and there has to be cleaning and things like that. And are our staff armed with the right conversations to have with those people in the right way? And I think the role play is absolutely right. What do we do if we find someone sick? What do we do if someone's not, respecting the distancing? What do we do if people are together? What do we do if members want to come in and are actually asking to sign waivers so that they can train closely with personal trainers? Like, we've got all of these things to come and to sort of sort through as a membership and as a community, and everyone's doing it slightly differently, guided by their states or countries. But it is there's a lot of beliefs and there's a lot of restrictions and there's a lot of differences in the way that people are approaching it. And I think it's a very human moment for us, because we're having to acknowledge what we believe, what the state says, and what our members believe, and all the people around them. And it's complex, but I think if we just lead with our heart and common sense and kindness in the moment, I think that will get us there, in the end.
really like that. And I also think that finding value in everyone's opinion for the staff really helps people with that accountability. So I would encourage people at home that if you're coming up and setting a protocol, it's not a dictation of this is the way we're going to do it. It's like, all right, how do we navigate through the club? I'm going to take you on a virtual walk and come along with me. And where do we get the check-in, and where should we put the hand sanitizer? And all right, if so-and-so thinks it should be over here, so-and-so is over here. Let's just take a vote. All right, you guys, we're going to put it here. I might disagree with you, but I'm going to do what you say. Let's put it here. Let's see how it goes. And then, you know, so-and-so thinks this. And it might be faster and easier if we tell them what to do and exactly where to go. But I think getting the staff somehow involved in the decision-making will really help them take the accountability and make sure it happens. And I think, I'm not sure, Blair, please go ahead.
You know, this is such a big deal. Well, two things. First of all, that what Emma was just saying there, that's the reason right there, what she was talking about, that's the reason we need more women in leadership roles in this industry. And I am completely serious. Oftentimes, guys, we immediately go to the practical so quickly, right? And so anyway, I appreciate that very much. The other thing is that whenever you're doing changes in your club, involve your front lines. They will see details you don't see. You include them, they get more engaged. That's maybe one of the strongest ways you can connect, and they can create that. We have in our clubs frequently, if we have to change a policy that affects staff members, we figure out the staff members who it's going to impact the most. And then they get to put together a task force. They get paid for it. And we tell them, here's our constraints and why we're trying to change this policy. You guys take as much time as you need over the course, pick a leader and write that change in policy, bring it back to us, and then we'll look at it. And we've done this a handful of times, and I'll tell you, every time, it's just better than what we've ever done. When you are thinking about operational change, get your frontline staff in.
Well, I want to say something that Blair might not say right now, but everybody knows Blair's involved with MXM as the owner. And, you know, his shutdown survey, MXM shutdown survey, is available free to the whole industry. And communication and the whole purpose of what Chris brought forward with Sara here is two-way street. And what your members are concerned with are going to parallel in lots of ways what your staff is concerned with. And so taking advantage of that free shutdown survey that MXM is providing is a good idea. And also, Sara, to your point, each person's different. You know, if I've got an employee that has no reason not to come back other than they're afraid, we're going to work with that person. They can go on, you know, potentially FMLA or take their PTO or even unpaid time off, or maybe I don't appeal their unemployment as long as we have a consistent ruling on how we handle those things. But treating each person based on where they are, to Emma's point, not where you are, and working with people. You know, what are you going to do if a member in a state that says you got to wear a mask and a member doesn't wear a mask doing cardio? I don't want members wearing a mask doing cardio. Right. They're going to pass out. My risk of them fainting and passing out and hyperventilating is higher than my risk of them getting cardio, COVID-19, because of the way I've spaced out my cardio. So, you know, how are you going to handle those things? Well, you got to handle those things, you know, based on, you know, what Joe Cerulli loves to say, use your brain. You got to use good judgment and know that there's not going to be a rule for everything.
Right.
But taking advantage of the feedback mechanisms through surveying and the MXM survey is a great vehicle for that.
Blair, do you mind typing in the chat box or telling us the link that people can go to for the free survey? Because
I'll put it in there. I will do it right now, Sara.
I love telling a man what to do. All right. Well, thank you for doing that.
Blair's talking about women.
Especially when I just said, yes, I'll do it right now. Yeah.
It is factually known women are better salespeople in every industry. If you haven't read the book Why She Buys, which was a few years old, about the importance of how women drive the economy, and a very clear understanding that women do have a better sense of empathy than men's as a statistical factor. So Why She Buys is a great book on how females control the economy.
Why She Buys, I like that. And Chris, I can't remember if it was you or Blair that talked about ambassadors. What was that? I think it was.
Yeah, compliance ambassadors. We just think that training needs to be with everybody in the club so that they know how to approach somebody. Emma, Bill, Chris, all talking about role playing and that. That's exactly what that training should do. I always say, create some micro case studies, right? So a micro case study is really simple. Okay, Bill Smith is a physician and he's come in and he's doing this. How would you handle that? And then go into the role play and create these different little, case studies that you're doing your compliance ambassador training. Also, remember, whatever training you're doing out there, as you're bringing people back in, determine which of it is sort of temporary and which is permanent, and make sure it goes into your employee onboarding. It won't be operational. It'll fade off into the distance unless you get it built into your employee onboarding.
And I think that's very important. And somebody asked, are most fitness facilities requiring masks? And what happens is, I've got a whole bunch of sheets of paper here that I looked up all the different states that were opening, being the lawyer, and just I am the Leslie Knope of fitness. I've decided that with my numbers, any requirements for wellness.
Good reference.
I'm sorry, but I've been called it more than once. All the states seem to be requiring the masks, requiring the gloves when they open, requiring social distancing. But I think what these governors are missing, and if anybody has any connections with the governors out there, is a cardio program, let's say for Group X or even with a machine, is totally different than a yoga class or a Pilates class. Yes, make people bring their own mats, but communicate with your members and make sure you have special time slots for older adults, possibly earlier in the morning or later in the midday, whatever works. And also think about starting and launching off with those yoga and those Pilates programs where there's not as much, exhaling and not as much sweating. And nobody seems to be, looking at this, and because I don't think the governors or that are setting these standards are really aware. Most of our facilities also work at 35 square feet intervals, so that you take 6 feet by 6 feet, that's 36 square feet. We're already setting our room limitations at 35 square feet per person. So we're not that far off. It's just making them stay where they're supposed to stay. So you can do it with strength training. You can do it with those mind-body programs. But the cardio, I hate to say this, but the Zumbas, they ain't going to be happening for that long. So think about also how you're going to roll out. Now we're at that 5:44 time mark right there. And so I'm going to let you all give us your closing. We can go a little over because we can. And I'm going to start, I'm going to start with you, Bill. Give us some closing on communicating with your staff and communicating with your members.
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot. Study up, know what you're talking about. If you don't know for sure, don't be part of the rumor mill of just adding further speculation to this mess. Every state's kind of going off the reservation doing their own thing. Every county is considering violating states. The states are violating federal. Federal's got, so, if you do your homework, know what you're saying is truthful, and do your chores. Update your website, update your Facebook, make sure you're doing what you should be doing to keep your house in order with regard to, letting your consumers and your employees know what's going on. That's really my parting comments on the communication aspect.
Thank you. Blair?
Yeah, I would say also keep it steady. Keep a steady stream of communication and updates going out. If you sent out an update and it was detailed about everything you're doing to your staff, I promise you they'll appreciate it. They're looking for that stuff. And if you don't have that, just try to, if you're the leader, come up with something else to say. I sent out one the other day that just said, hey, you guys might try this. Shut off the TV and start playing some of your family's favorite music and just sit there. Because we had done that the other night with my dad there, my 92-year-old dad playing. And it was like a vacation. And so your communication doesn't always have to be about all your updates and everything.
Very nice. Chris, tell us a little bit about the consulting that you do and give us your parting words.
Oh, yeah, no, just, well, I used to speak a lot at events when we used to have them, but apparently Bill and I are going to make our comeback at Dallas, right? If that occurs. No, I just committed you, Bill. Sorry, you're in. Here's the one thing. Everything that everybody shared today on the panel was really valuable. And, you know, from the ways to communicate, the transparency, being real, staying true to your brand. And what you need to do is when you do that, you make your staff your raving fans, right? We always want members to be raving fans, but that kind of, you build trust, you build raving fans. And I think it's important at this period in time that people protect the house. And that's something that I've always done at clubs that I've owned and operated and with clubs I've worked with, but it's an important concept. And that just means the house comes first. And it's so easy when a member says, I don't think that's clean enough for a staff member to go, yeah, right. Or I think that person's doing something wrong. Yeah, I know, huh? We can't have that. It's not them, it's us, it's we. So when they have the input that Blair talked about and they lead with their heart, like Emma talked about, and they're true and transparent, like Bill talked about, all of those things come together, they're going to protect the house. And we need that right now with people that are coming back and they're going to be skeptical and looking for those things that are wrong.
Wonderful. And Emma, I was going to ask you, what's the name of your book?
Building a Badass Boutique. Look, I've got one. Building a Badass Boutique. So it's about boutiques, but it's also about clubs in general. So it's, you know, it's 10-touch journey to building or designing a fitness studio that rocks. And there's a lot on communication actually in here. So yeah, thank you, Sarah. And then probably my parting words would just be, this has been an enormous challenge, and from every challenge comes an incredible opportunity to do something even better than we've done before. So I would say when we go back to our clubs and our communities and our people, let's take this opportunity to disrupt communication. Like, I don't want to hear, and I talk about this a bit in the book, I don't want to hear about hour-long meetings. There's very few meetings that actually need to be an hour long. It might be a 12-minute meeting to decide these two things. Can everyone please come? Coffee orders in and let's go. Anyone who's late's paying for it. Like, there's just, do the meetings need to be that long? What are the best way to communicate the boring, dry stuff? What's the best way to communicate those human moments where we really want to be together and celebrate each other? Like, just break apart the whole thing. Dial up the human pieces, dial down all the stuff that we need to know, but put it in a way that I know it when I need to know it. So I just think we can rethink communication, and no double talking, straight talking, you know, and again, just from the heart. So I'd take this opportunity to redefine how do we communicate with each other and with our members and make it even more magnificent. I
can't thank you all enough. You never want to say this. You guys are my favorite webinar. It's so much fun.
Yeah. I think it's 3 times a day.
I think it's because you all just don't like each other, and it's just thrilling. But thank you all for doing this. I really appreciate it. All these wonderful panelists are on our live stream mania. We've got a 32 different business seminars that are going to be on the weekend of May. What is it, May 29th through 31st. I'm going to show you a short video that you guys can watch. My wonderful team, Mike Lieber, who's running this webinar for us, has done an absolute terrific job making sure this happens. So if you guys will indulge me, this will be my parting.
Introducing Live Stream Mania, powered by Zoom. SCW has developed an entire fitness convention direct to your home. Interact in real time with live training alongside nationally renowned presenters. One affordable flat fee gets you access to the full schedule of sessions with no walls and no limits. Move between any of our live streaming sessions at your leisure with no pre-selected classes and no boundaries. This is our way to empower you, our SCW community. So register, earn your CECs, and get educated, because now is the perfect time to invest in yourself. Take care, and we look forward to having you at one of our many live stream Mania sessions soon.
All right. There we go.
Nice.
Thank you all for joining us. 59 seconds, babe. 59 seconds. All right. Thank you all. Have a good night, everybody.